Hello, Alyssa.
Hi, Sam.
Is that how I start it?
Hey, Alyssa.
Hey, Alyssa.
Hey, Sam.
Are you ready?
I sure the heck am.
Okay, let's do this. Okay, so today we are going to be discussing loss. I think this was requested, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was requested quite a few times.
So here we go. I'm not an expert, but Alyssa kind of is.
Yeah, literally my eyes are already watering. It's like, what is this, 20 seconds in?
Going downhill really, really rapidly.
Yeah, maybe don't watch this if you're having like a blue day.
But we wanted to touch on this because this is something that obviously a lot of people go through, and share our stories, coping mechanisms, etc.
So I lost my dad almost 3 years ago, and I've lost quite a few people, but obviously losing a parent is it's pretty significant.
That's a biggin.
Yep, it was a biggin. But I've also lost, I recently lost one of my ex-boyfriends who I was with for a really long time, and lost friends and stuff like that as well. So yeah, I've been through the ringer.
You really have. Freaking life hits you hard, man.
Yeah, I always, every time like something like this, every time I lose another person, I almost like feel selfish too, because I'm like, woe is me. Like, it's, you know what I mean? Like, it's so weird because it's like, oh my God, of course, like, them, number one, and then also their family and the rest of their friends and stuff. Like, I almost feel this like guilt for feeling that way.
Yeah. But I mean, I think that like in terms of like your ex-boyfriend and your friends and stuff like that, of course it's going to be like really hard on their family and whatever, but like you share what you share with that person. Mm-hmm. And it just is what it is, like you shouldn't feel bad for it.
I know. It's just, but that's the thing with loss. Well, I mean, loss and grief for everybody is completely different.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what I've learned throughout, I don't know, I guess like navigating grief.
Yeah.
But for me, yeah, it's a river and a valley. I go through all of these different, just like feelings, and like feeling guilty, feeling selfish, questioning if I actually was friends with that person.
Oh, weird.
How close we actually were, if I'm making it out to be that we had a better relationship that we did. Every time I kind of like came out on the other side, so to speak, it was always the case that we were as close as I thought we were, and whatever. I would even have to like go back into my text messages and stuff like that to prove to myself that we were friends.
Weird.
I know, it's such a weird thing, but it's such a touchy thing to talk about because obviously it's so emotional. There's so much pain and emotion behind it. But something that was really hard for me was I started losing people really early in life, and I watched, so touchy, but I watched people, I don't even know how to say this, but make such big proclamations and stuff like that about people who had passed and whatnot, and with social media and stuff like that coming in. And I think that because grief is so subjective and so different in every scenario, some people do take to Facebook and Instagram and stuff like that and post their feelings, which I think is, any way that you need to deal with grief and loss is appropriate.
Yeah,
it's correct because it's correct for you. If it's dangersome behavior, then obviously not
great.
We want to try to navigate through that and like search out resources. But in that instance, I think whatever helps you cope. But it was so early on kind of hard for me to be seeing this kind of thing where it was, and I really, again, I'm saying it's so touchy and I don't mean any offense by it, but it almost seemed like a popularity contest with like who knew somebody better, who was closer or whatever. And so I think that's where that stemmed from for me, was like, oh, well, like, you
didn't want to be disingenuous in like how you were feeling about them after the fact kind of thing.
Exactly.
Yeah. It's so hard because like even you talking about how you like question yourself and stuff like that, it is reminiscent of how kind of like mental health can like warp your view of yourself.
Yeah.
And like you can be so sure of something or unsure of something as well that you're like, oh, like this must be true. Like it must be true that we weren't that close or whatever kind of thing. And you convince yourself of that. it's just odd. Like, it's odd how much like your mental state can kind of warp that.
Yeah.
In that moment.
Yeah. Even recently when I lost my ex-boyfriend, I started questioning myself, and I was like, are you joking?
Yeah.
Like, I was like head over heels in love with this person since I was like, I don't know, it's like 17 or 18 or something like that. Like, on and off, we're on and off and stuff. But even in that moment, I was like, do I deserve, when I went to the funeral, I was like, do I deserve to be here? And it's like, well, I mean, of course you do. It's such a weird thing. But yeah, loss.
I want to take it back a little bit to talk about, I want to take it back to like the first person that you felt like was like a loss in your life. Who was the first person? How old were you? If you're ready to share.
Yeah. I experienced loss for the first time, I would say, in high school. There was somebody in our high school who ended up passing away. I wasn't super close with this person, but we had started hanging out kind of more during the end of what happened. And that was the first time that I really experienced anything like that, because you're so young. Did I say I was like 16 or 17, I think?
Yeah.
And it was so crazy. And honestly, that was huge for, I mean, the entire school.
Yeah. Just
because like what a tragedy.
Yeah.
And what a horrendous thing to go through, and her close friends and her family, obviously, and stuff like that. And that it kind of just like hit me in that moment, that life is so fleeting.
Yeah.
Like, it's just, and it hit me really hard because I've always been kind of someone who questions like the universe in a way. Like,
go on. This is a little bit of a different conversation now.
But if I didn't have anything to think about when I was a kid, like I was just sitting in the car or something, my mind would immediately go to like, okay, what is life? What are we here for? What's the meaning? What's beyond Earth? What's beyond the universe? Like, what's in that universe? Like, it would be like all consuming to me.
Oh, I used to be so scared thinking about death and stuff, and like it used to just boggle my mind. Like, how is it that you can just be gone and like the world is going on without you? Like, how is that possible? And I remember one time I was talking to my mom about it. I was like sobbing, and I was like, I don't want to die, like, and she was like, when you get older, like this won't. And I think I asked her if she was scared, and she was like, no, like when you get older, like you'll understand, like blah blah blah, like it's not, don't worry, whatever kind of thing. And I asked her recently, and she was like, oh, I'm terrified of dying. And I was like, what? I'm like, you lied to me. I'm like, I'm terrified of dying. And I overcame that fear because you were like, it's fine. And
that's
I was
a
like,
mom's job.
Yeah.
That was her job in that moment. Yeah. So that was the first one. And I honestly won't go into that story a whole lot because I don't feel like it's my story to tell. And she had a lot of like really close friends who probably could speak to the, that a lot better. But that was just my first kind of like, view into, oh my goodness, like this is a real thing. And after that happened, I was talking to my dad, and he said to me that when he graduated the year after, he started losing people like
left, right, and center.
Yeah, it was just like one after the other. And he said, he was really serious when he was talking to me about it, obviously. And he was like, you need to be very careful because it's so easy. And he said, once people get out of high school, like life can hit you hard. And that is what happened. We started losing people like one after the other. It was so
many people from our high school. It's insane.
Yeah. And that, I got chills. And that as well just kind of kept reinforcing that we are so mortal.
Yeah.
Like you can be walking across the street, you can be driving your car, you could, be experimenting with drugs. It could be your first time, it could be your 700th time.
Yeah.
And it's just we're
circumstances.
Yeah, we're flesh and blood and cells, and they die.
Yeah.
But when I was 22 is when I lost my dad.
What was the date?
October 24th.
The day before my mom's birthday.
No.
Yeah.
Well, it was October 24th, 2016, I guess. 2016, 17, 18. Hold on. Let me double check this. I posted a photo.
Oh, wait.
Okay. Yeah, October 24th, 2016.
So I know that we've talked actually pretty in depth about your kind of experience with, like looking after your dad once you found out he was sick and kind of him passing and stuff like that. I'm curious, like, in terms of loss specifically, at what point do you feel like you actually went through the loss phase kind of thing? Because you knew he was sick. Mm-hmm. You knew he probably wasn't going to get better. Mm-hmm. Was it something where you were able to kind of start that grieving period almost like before he had even passed?
Yeah, so what I learned from being his caretaker was that it's completely different, because the caretaker grieves
such a hard role.
Yeah. Because I feel like my family, the rest of my family, started grieving while he was sick.
Yeah.
And they could enjoy certain moments with him and stuff like that. But being the caretaker, again, so different in every instance, but it was so much more like business.
Well, and it is like all consuming, right? Because mm-hmm. it was your job, basically. Yeah. Like, it was what you did sun up to sundown.
Yeah. Well, I lived and breathed what we were doing that day. And I know I've said it before, but every single day felt like a year, mm-hmm. which is why, we'll probably get into this later, but which is why after he passed away, I was in Vancouver 3 days later going out for dinner and stuff. And people were like, how could you?
Yeah.
And in that moment, I was like, oh my goodness, but he's been gone for like so long. But it's because every one of those days really did feel like so long. So 3 days after, it was like imagine having a full-time job and like your whole life and then not having that anymore. Every single day would then feel like eternity. Mm-hmm. So when he was gone and I didn't have anything to do anymore, I was just sitting in this empty house, without him.
Yeah.
Wipe a tear. That feels like it feels like eternity. Mm-hmm. So I was like, I need to get the fuck out of here. Like, I'm just sitting here around all of his stuff with his 4 cats. Like, see you later.
4 cats, Steve. Dude, what were you doing?
Oh my goodness. Side story. One time, the little comedic relief here. One time when we were on the way to radiation, he was really concerned that I was going to drop the cats off at the SPCA once he passed.
Oh.
And he made me promise that I would take care of them. And I kept telling him, because my dad really wanted me to keep the house, like our family house, but I hadn't lived in that house for years and years and years. And it was just him in the house. But anyway, he wanted me to keep the house really bad. And I said, Dad, I have to move. Like, I have to go back to Toronto. Like, I have a life. Like,
yeah.
I'm 22. I'm building a life for myself. And he was like, but what about the cats? What about the cats? Every time he thought I was just like going to ditch the cats.
So Dad, I'm going to have to leave them here. I don't know what to tell you.
So I was like, Dad, I will take them with me. If I have to, I will move every one of those cats in with me. And I kept all the cats. So they all lived out their very happy lives. We still have 2. 2 of them were very, very sick. I know that this is what the content people came for, truly.
And this is Lost About My Cats.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
Miss you, Stripe.
Do miss Stripe. But anyway, I kept my word. I kept all of my words that I gave my dad. But anyway, yeah, so back to being a caretaker. The caretaker does grieve last, because, my day was making, I know we probably said this before, but like making him food that he could eat that day, getting him dressed so that he could go to radiation, making sure that he had his pills on time, making his pill schedule, like just all of these things, like driving to and from, rubbing his legs because, he was dehydrated, so they get really, really uncomfortable. And in the end, he also became really particular about certain waters and like treatments and stuff like that. So it was all consuming, and it was basically like a business. It was like a well-oiled business machine. So I wasn't in denial at all. I was the one who knew he was going to pass before anybody, because when we would go to the hospital together, he would put on like a brave face, basically. And so the doctor would just send him back home. And there was one time over the long weekend where he couldn't drink anymore because he had stomach cancer. And so he couldn't drink any fluids. And it was a long weekend. I think it was probably Thanksgiving. And we couldn't get him into the cancer center for hydration, which is they literally just hook you up to an IV so that you can get hydrated. And he didn't leave the bed. And he was too heavy for me to actually pick up. Like, I could pick up his legs to put on his pants and stuff, but I couldn't actually lift him. And so I couldn't take him anywhere, to use the washroom or anything like that. And he was really like particular about people in his house. So he didn't want a nurse or anything like that. And so when I brought him in on the Tuesday, they were telling me that they were going to send him home again. And I'm like, you guys don't understand like how sick he is. I'm like, you think that just because he comes in here and is
puts
like
a smile on.
Yeah, and is talking to you and stuff. I'm like, that's all of his energy that he has. And then he gets in the car and then that's it. Like, he can't move. And I'm like, what do you think is going on here? You think he's just getting up and cooking himself breakfast in the morning? Like, he needs to be admitted to hospital. Anyway, so I was not in denial. And I had a nurse, because I think that the way that I deal with grief is very like, kind of like stoic, I guess, where it seems like I'm unaffected almost. And so a nurse came in and had tested his vitals after I basically blew up in the cancer center and sat me down and was like, you know that your dad's really sick, right? Like, he doesn't have very much time. And I'm like, this is what I'm fucking trying to tell you guys. Like, don't come to me and act like I don't know what's going on. I'm the one who knows what's going on. Anyway, so, yeah, I wasn't in denial, but it wasn't, I don't think I started to grieve until like months after he passed.
Yeah.
Because I was so busy. Because
you're just focused on the task at hand, right? Like, what needs to be done now.
Yeah, and the caretaking didn't stop after he passed away because I was the executor of his will and stuff like that. And so I had to, deal with that, which I didn't even ever think of growing up. I know that some people think about inheritance when they grow up, but I didn't. That was never a conversation in my house. That was never something I thought about. We weren't well off, so it was like, it wasn't a thing. But you still have to, no matter what somebody has, they're still in a state of some sort. And so the grieving really, really started for me when we like started dissecting his room. And when my dad was sick, I was just trying to cope in any way I could. So I would walk around with this, like, the Starbucks, like, venti, like, cold drink cups.
I know them well.
Yeah, they're reusable ones. So I would pour vodka in there.
Okay.
And
went down a different path. Are you going to be talking about frappuccinos?
Nope. And I would fill it with water, and I would drink that.
Ugh, disgusting.
Yep. And so we usually had radiation in the morning. And so what I would do is I would take him to radiation. I would come home, and I knew that we weren't going anywhere, you know what I mean? Because he couldn't go anywhere.
Yeah.
And if we had to go somewhere immediately, I would have had to call the ambulance anyway because I couldn't lift him. So basically after radiation, I would start drinking. And I don't really ever even remember getting like drunk ever. It was basically like it took the edge off.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until like after he passed that I realized like how much I had been drinking. I was like, this is crazy. Like, I literally get up, do this, and then I come home and fix myself drinks until we go back to bed.
Yeah.
That was like basically all. It was the only way that I could maintain the patience to not, I don't want to say deal with him, but if you've ever cared for somebody who's in that much pain, like, emotional fatigue is a thing.
Absolutely.
And it was really hard to be kind 24/7.
That's the thing that I think is so tricky about loss, and it's hard because I feel like people are kind of judgmental sometimes. Mm-hmm. Like, I feel like people, how you were talking about how you are quite stoic, and you were in Vancouver like days after your dad passed and stuff, and people were kind of like, what the fuck? People are really judgmental about it. And even when all the stuff with my brother, that was such a weird thing for me because it was like I lost him, but we didn't physically lose him, right. But he's such a different person. And it was just such a whirlwind of emotions because I felt guilty that I felt bad for myself when obviously he had been through this horrific, life-changing, accident. And I felt bad that I felt bad, basically. And I felt guilty that I didn't like get along with him as well. I felt guilty that I let my emotions get the best of me when I would get upset by that. And like, I wished that I could do more. And, like it was just so many emotions wrapped into one. And then I would start feeling sorry for myself because I was like, no, like I should be allowed to grieve. I should be allowed to feel upset. And it was just so many conflicting emotions kind of thing. And it wasn't any easier when I felt like people were judging me because I was like feeling sorry for myself or whatever. Because nobody knows what that relationship was like to you. Nobody knows like the ins and outs of any relationship that you have with any other person, because like someone could, like, let's say someone watching the podcast could be like, oh yeah, Alyssa and Sam were friends, but like they don't understand the magnitude of like you don't understand the magnitude of like our relationship and you know, like what we have in each other. And so I think that but you know, it's like I think that it's just so easy to look at someone from the outside and judge something, but people that might have been judging you weren't thinking about the fact that you were being a caretaker for your father for so long and how draining that truly is, because talking about it is one thing, but living it is completely different. And you know, my parents went through that with my brother as well, and then my dad got into an accident and we were going through that with him, and it's really difficult to be selfless all day every day, like and not be putting yourself first in any regard. Like it's not about what you want to eat, what you want to do, what you have planned. Like it doesn't matter. Because you're dropping absolutely everything to do that one thing, and nobody can truly understand what that's like until they're in that position, and everyone does deal with it completely differently.
Well, and that was something that I kind of had to come to terms with myself, because at the beginning it was easier, if I can even say that, because I was still fresh. You know, my emotions were fresh, like my patience was fresh. Everything was like, I was happy to help, sort of thing. I mean, I'm using these words, but you can know what I mean. And kind of a month in, it started to get harder and harder to be as patient. I was never like mean to my dad or cruel to my dad, but I didn't want to rub his legs for as long. I didn't, you know, I didn't want to keep making different meals because he didn't want the first one. And, you know, I would roll my eyes when he would ask me for a different pH of water or whatever, you know, behind his back or whatever. And that regardless of if he knew that that's how I was feeling, it still felt shitty that I felt like that.
Yeah, of course.
You know, but when he did end up getting admitted to hospital, my mom started coming on her lunch breaks and stuff to spend some time with me, because another one of my dad's big fears was once he got admitted to hospital that I would just like
leave him there.
Leave him there, and that was never my intention. I couldn't administer morphine and
well, he needed more care than you could possibly give at home.
And that was the only reason I wanted him in there. Of course I wanted him to be at home, and I know I've said this before, but he was only in the hospital I think a week. I think it was 7 days. So he was at home for as long as possible. But my mom started coming because I was at the hospital like 10-12 hours every day, because I didn't know this, but family members can basically be there like however fucking long they want.
Oh, hell yeah.
Yeah, I would be there, like, I would come and go.
You can shack right up in there.
I did. Mm-hmm. I did. I actually, just like, I bruised my tailbone from sitting on plastic chairs beside his bed.
I, too, have bruised my tailbone, but it was from diving on a diving board.
Sounds more fun.
It wasn't. I almost drowned.
Sam's little head only using her arms.
Honestly, it was the worst. Anyways, carry on. You think you've been through loss? Okay, let me tell you.
The loss of my butt. Yeah. But no, that's how long I was sitting in those fucking chairs. Damn. I should have brought a pillow. Ugh, hindsight's 20/20. Yeah. Anyway, so my mom started coming at her lunch breaks, and she sat me down one time, and I remember it so vividly. It was like so beautifully sunny, fall out, and that's when she told me about emotional fatigue, and she was like, you know, you still are a person and you still have a life, and I know, and your dad knows that you love him very, very much, but you do have to take care of yourself. Mm-hmm. And so kind of in that moment I was like, you know, maybe I'm not a bad person for feeling this way or thinking these things or whatever. Because at one point, and this is obviously really hard to admit, but when they told us that he would only have like, you know, what they said exactly is that in a couple months' time, he'd be in really bad shape. And so we didn't know if that was 2 months, 3 months, 4 months, 6 months, 8 months, whatever. And this was before he got admitted to hospital. And I remember thinking, like, I don't know how much longer I can do this. Yeah. And it's not that I was wishing that my dad would pass earlier or whatever. Like, I don't want to get that misconstrued, but it was just a feeling of like, I can't imagine doing this for like years.
Well, and I think that there is, like, as much as obviously it sounds insensitive, but again, it's like you can't understand until you're in that position, but there is a sense of relief, and not only relief for yourself and the position that you were being kind of put in and expected to be in, but also relief for that person, because that's not
It's not a life.
No, and it's not how anybody wants to carry on. You know what I mean? Like, just, and so I think that there is relief in that, and as hard as that is to like admit and be a factor, like, it's just...
Yeah. And it was. And if I thought that there was a chance that my dad would get better, obviously.
Oh, of course.
But there was no chance. The hospital, you know what I mean? Like, they told him to stop trying to eat because it's just, what's the point? Because you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It was, we were nearing the end anyway. And when he did pass, it was so weird. So the day before he passed away, I just needed to take a day, and I was like, I don't know what it is, but like, I can't do this today. Like, I can't go down there. I can't sit there for 12 hours. And at this point, this was 6 days into his hospital stay. He didn't know who I was. And he would fall asleep while like looking at me and stuff like that. Like, he wouldn't have known if I was there or not. And so I was like, it's really hard to see a parent in that situation, being so helpless. I obviously don't have kids, but it almost gives me that kind of vibe, because they can't do anything for themselves, and they're just there. And so I just decided that I was going to take a me day. And I don't actually think I even went to the hospital that morning. And so I went on just like a day date with my partner at the time and a couple of my friends. And then on the way back, I just like drove up in the driveway, and I was like, I feel like I need to go to the hospital now. And my partner was like, it's like 10 o'clock at night. Like, are you serious? And I was like, I just feel like I have to. And I went down to the hospital, got there at like 11, I think. And I stayed there until 1 a.m. maybe. And I just held my dad's hand, and he was sleeping. I think he woke up at one point and called me like doll or something like that. But it was, I don't think he knew that it was me, really. And I just, I just told him that if he like needed to go, that he could go. Mm-hmm. And then,
oh God.
And then the next morning he did.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. It's so like, it is crazy how often you hear things like that. Like, it's crazy how connected we are emotionally through like you just knowing that you needed to go and see him. And
yeah. Ugh, intermission.
Yeah.
I don't actually think I've told that story out loud before.
I think I've heard you say it once, but
yeah,
not on podcast, that's for sure.
Yeah. Probably when I had a couple drinks in me, which is easier to deal with. That's why being sober is so fucking hard. Anyway, so let me just dry all these tears. I'm gonna have like drip marks down my foundation for the rest.
Hopefully
of
those
podcast.
eyelash extensions are set.
Oh, they're set, baby. So yeah, the next morning, I was there so late that I slept in, and when I woke up, I had like 10 missed calls from my aunt and voicemails, and the voicemails were like, Alyssa, call me back when you get a sec, call me back. And I'm like, okay,
obviously I know what's going on here.
Yeah, like if you guys think that you're being like
discreet.
Like, yeah, I'm like, my dad's sick in the hospital with terminal cancer. Like, you could just call me 3 times and I would know what's going on. Anyway, so as soon as I got those texts, or sorry, those phone calls, I had woken up at like 10 a.m. I think, and my partner was already at work, and I just kind of like sat there in the bed, and I didn't like cry. I was just like, okay,
just taking it in.
Yeah, and I was like, okay, this is happening. And then my dad's oncologist had called me as well, and so I called him back, and he said, I think you probably know why I'm calling. And I said, yeah. And he said, your dad passed away. And I said, thank you for letting me know. And then he actually said to me, and my dad's oncologist was like kind of a douchebag, I'll be honest. He was I think he was like
let's not mince words here.
Yeah. I think he was probably like a like really good doctor, but he was just, I don't know, he was just kind of a douchebag.
Like not good, like bedside manner?
No, like he was so rude to me, and like during the whole process and stuff like that, and I was just like, ugh, fuck off. But anyway, in this moment, it was really nice of him to say this, and he said, I just want you to know that like your dad knew that you were there for him, and he was like, I saw you there every single day, every single appointment, and he's like, your dad knew that he you loved him. And I was like, oh, he really took a turn there. Yeah. So just like, all right, okay in my books now.
Thank you, Dr. Douchebag. Yeah. I appreciate that.
Yeah. But that was validating to hear, because something I still struggle with actually is just wondering if like I did enough.
Oh, you did enough.
Yeah. Thank you. So I mean, after that, basically my mom came up to the house and stuff, and I honestly only cried for like 5 minutes maybe. And I don't know why. It was just so weird. I was just like, I feel like I was out of emotion.
Yeah.
I was just like, I'm tapped. My gas tank's empty. And then I got drunk that night.
Fair.
Just classic Alyssa fashion. And then the Vancouver trip and just wanting to feel normal and stuff like that. It just all came kind of like to a halt. I think when you have something like that going on, and it's as we said, all consuming, it's just like you feel like you have no direction. It's like I literally felt like I had no purpose.
Yeah.
I was like, what's my purpose in life now? I came from Toronto. I was a completely different person. 3 months was like, I aged 20 years in those 3 months. And I think that anybody who knew me before and after can attest to that.
Yeah.
I was such a different person afterwards. So I was like, okay, well, I don't have any friends really that I connect with anymore. I don't have a job because I had to quit my job to take care of my dad. I was like, what do I do? I don't have my dad. He gave me purpose. I was like, what the fuck do I do now?
Yeah.
And I don't know if other people feel that way. I don't know, but it was just such a weird thing.
Yeah, well, and I think that part of that too, like moving on and being like, okay, like this is my new life without this person, and it is like they're your whole world for that time. Yeah. And even though it was a short time, it felt like a long time, and you did like uproot your entire life for him, and of course you were feeling that way. Yeah.
And I think I had somebody ask me actually on Instagram not too long ago what like important things I did with him and like how I took care of him and stuff like that. And when I look back, like it's only 3 years ago, but it feels like forever now. When I look back, like the most important thing that I did was be there.
Yeah.
And I think for me, I wouldn't have been able to live with myself if I had done anything differently.
Yeah.
Because my therapist even told me that not everybody does that. Not everybody would uproot their life. They would put them in care, or they would come back and visit once in a while or whatever. But to me, there was no other option. Once he asked me if I would come home, and initially I was only coming home to take care of him while he was going to get an operation, because at the time they thought it was just a small tumor that they could operate and he would be fine. But after that, there was no other option in my mind, and I would do it again.
Yeah.
Like if, God forbid, if my mom or my grandma or something got sick, I would do it all over again, 100%. And I think that I would be better prepared this time, and probably take more time for myself. But hell yeah, I would do it for anybody, because that's the thing. I kept telling myself, like, I think my mom actually said this one time, but not to me, but there is no do-over.
Yeah.
And it's such a finite thing. It's like, you can choose to be here or not, but that's something you will have to live with for the rest of your life. Mm-hmm. And so for me, there was one fight that my dad and I had because I was so overwhelmed and so stressed, and I yelled at him and said, I can't even remember what the fight was about. I can't remember what, he was still like able to walk and stuff like this at this time, but I yelled at him and I said, if I wasn't here, there would be nobody here to take care of you. And I just like live with that.
Yeah.
Like, like a way to kick a guy when he's down, you know what I mean?
I know, but I mean, again, it's just like, it is like that emotional fatigue, and it's hard to, because like even your dad probably wasn't coping well. He probably wasn't in the best state of mind, and he was probably saying and doing things that he didn't mean. And I think that stress can just result in you, like doing things that are out of character, in the same way that like when we get into arguments or whatever, we say things we don't mean, whatever. But I'm sure that your dad was pushing your buttons just as much as you were pushing his back.
Yeah, I'm actually pretty sure he called me. I just remembered. I'm pretty sure he called me a fucking bitch. And then I said, I wasn't here. Yeah, but that's the thing is like we were, gosh, when nobody else is there with you, it was just him and I would like to just remind everybody every day. You almost become like segregated from society, and you get a little like cabin feverish,
a little loopy.
yeah. But the way that he apologized was really cute. He took like a toy spider, and he like, I was doing the dishes like crying, and he like set it on the
scrubbing.
He set it on the windowsill because he knows like how scared I am of spiders, and he just like smiled at me, and that's a good memory. You know what I mean? Because it was like one of those few moments that he was the dad that I remembered.
Yeah.
Because he was in so much pain, I was seeing him as like a totally different person than I remembered my whole childhood.
Yeah.
Because my dad was so outgoing and so funny and whatever. Like basically my personality is like I'm a lot like my dad. Whereas my mom is like very book smart and a little bit more shy and stuff like that. My dad is just like, you know,
yeah,
like such a fun going guy. But, you know, even from the day that I landed from Toronto, he was a completely different person than I recalled. So, I mean, you gotta take the bad with the good, but that's something that I would not have been able to live with if I didn't go back and take care of him like 100%.
Yeah. Well, and I think you probably knew that that's what you needed to do too, for yourself, let alone for him.
Yeah. And you can keep those little moments and those little, I don't know, little nuggets of like happiness with you, because, you know, you are going to grow up and go through go through all of these milestones, and they're not going to be there. So if there is something that you can hold on to,
it's important,
you know, yeah, make those memories that you can hold on to.
Yeah. So you kind of talked a little bit about like after your dad passed and what that experience was like for you and how that transition was, but at what point do you feel like you were able to kind of like gain back that feeling of like you having purpose and all that kind of stuff? Like, was there a certain catalyst, or was it more so just like over time?
I think it was probably just over time. I remember breaking down one time when I was cleaning up the house and just like trying to like talk to my dad like in the sky or something like that, and that was kind of like a pivotal moment for me because I hadn't really done that before. I was kind of just like, again, going with the times, but I did end up selling the house because I just couldn't afford it anyway, and moving to Toronto. And I think moving back to Toronto was really important for me, not because I honestly like didn't even want to live in Toronto at the end anyway, like the first time.
Yeah.
But I think because I got pulled out, not against my will, but it wasn't my choice. I needed to go back
and like tie up loose ends.
Basically. Yeah, kind of. It felt like unfinished business.
Yeah.
And so when I went back, obviously people, the higher ups and stuff like that from Cactus Club, my company, not my company,
my company.
I wish now. The company I worked for 8 years. Obviously they knew what I'd gone through and stuff, but we had opened another location, and a lot of the new people didn't know, and so it was kind of like I got to reinvent myself, and I did reinvent myself, if I can be so bold. When I left Toronto the first time, I was still going out and partying, and like I said, like, you know, trying to just live the 21, 22-year-old life, and when I came back, I felt like I was just so much more mature and level-headed and understanding, empathetic, compassionate, like all these, you know, qualities that I actually do really like in myself. I kind of like honed those in that time. And so I kind of was like rediscovering myself, because I had been in this like weird, like I honestly see that as two different people in my brain.
Yeah.
And like two different like eras. And so I guess opening King Taps was the restaurant that we opened. That was probably like when
like a real turning point.
Yeah, when I started to move on, and I still think about him every day. You know, at the beginning I felt like I saw him like everywhere.
Oh, weird.
Usually at the gas station, which is weird.
Yeah, I could see some shrouded figures with mustaches looking like your dad.
Exactly. Yeah, I would see him everywhere, and kind of sometimes when I see him, or who I think is him, it just kind of like makes me think that he is like thinking of me or something like that. Like, I'm not a super spiritual person, and I've never like thought that I can talk to the dead or anything like that. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not in that, like, spiritual mind, whatever. But yeah, I would talk to him and I would like smile when I see him, and
that connection still exists for you.
Yeah, exactly. And but that's, I mean, it started to get less, honestly, and kind of, I think that that's like a natural thing. I don't think it's something that you should feel bad about if you start thinking about them less, because like at the beginning, he was, every morning when I woke up, it was the first thing I thought of was like something about it, or him or the house or whatever. And now, you know, I not moved on, obviously. I don't think you ever move on from losing a parent. But it's less impactful. It becomes less hard.
It's less tender, right?
Yeah.
Like, yeah. It's funny that you say the thing about like when you were cleaning your dad's house and you were sort of like almost like allowing yourself to talk to him. Because that's so much. It's funny that you think that was a pivotal moment, because that's so much how I view you, because it's almost like you won't let yourself kind of like fall down. Like you're just so like, just got to do what needs to be done, kind of thing. And it's like you're just always like pushing through kind of thing. So I think it's like such a perfect moment. Like, of course that's what helped you kind of
start the healing process.
Yeah, because it's like you do need to just at some point like let go and be like, fucking I can't do it.
Yeah.
Can't do it. Like you need to not be so in control.
Yeah. One, you're right. That is how I am. And I think that there's benefits to it, but I also think that it does come to those boiling points where I just like break down and I'm just like, what fucking now?
Yeah.
You know? And I felt like I kind of kept getting beaten while I was down too. So I think that it was just inevitable. I was going to have like that kind of thing. But honestly, as I'm, because I never used to cry, because I was kind of taught growing up by my dad. That crying was pointless and that it was like embarrassing and only little girls did it, and I wasn't a little girl, I was a big girl type of thing. And throughout this journey with like therapy and stuff like that, I've kind of become like a waterworks machine.
Welcome to the club.
Yeah. But I feel like there's something so interesting about being open and vulnerable. And it's still uncomfortable for me. It's uncomfortable to me that people know that I'm not impenetrable.
Oh my God, I'm literally surrounded by people like you. Jesus, like I'm like the softest little like cushy marshmallow ever. Like someone like hits my arm walking past me and I'm like, why would you do that? And like I feel like you and like Matt are like both like, I'm crying just thinking about like you and Matt are both like, nope, I'm fine. Everything's fine. I don't need to talk about my feelings. And I'm like, but I don't want to talk about mine. It's so funny. But I definitely do feel like Matt's been kind of working on that as well. Like, you know, accepting his feelings and the fact that they exist. And, and I feel like I've been able to be like so much closer in my relationship with him as he's kind of like let that go. And even with you and stuff, like I feel like I know you better than ever. Like, when you first moved in with us, it's so funny because like you've always been such a close friend to me and stuff like that, and obviously like we had like distance between us and whatever because we just were going our own paths and stuff, and we didn't talk a ton when we lived apart, but when you first moved in I started to realize how much I didn't actually know anything about you. I honestly was like, I know she's like funny and she has red hair but like I couldn't, for the life of me, I was like, I don't know what she likes. I don't know what you don't like. I don't know like what your like little things are. And like now I'm very attuned. But like it's
too aware.
I do feel like as much as like obviously losing your dad was horrible for you and it's horrible to watch you have to like go through that and still, you know, go through it. But like I think that did change you in such a good and like necessary way. And I think that it's just like what a blessing in disguise in a way, and not to
no I've said it before.
Yeah, like it's just it really, I think it was like a huge turning point in your life in general for you. And I think that you know, being aware of that fleeting feeling of what life can be kind of thing, and how quickly it's gone, like I think that is so terrifying when we first realize it. But I think that there is this it's sort of like this pushed to be like, just do it. Like, just do the things you need to do. Like, love who you love, and like, you know, make sure the people around you know that, and do what is fun and enjoyable, and all these things you've been putting off because it's like you're focused on this other shit that you think is important, and you realize so suddenly it's not.
Yeah.
And I think that as much as, like, it's so scary. It's so scary learning those things, but it really is like just of the utmost importance for you to be able to move on with your life once you realize, like, YOLO.
And thank you for
no problem.
The YOLO. I want to quickly say I have said that before because I don't want people to like interpret that wrong. Yes, what a terrible traumatic thing. But I'm so grateful that I could pull something positive out of that experience. Yeah. So I am glad that I took that experience and became a better person. But yeah, I really did YOLO after that. I went on a 6-week vacation. I went backpacking in Central America. I decided that I wanted to start vlogging. I stopped vlogging.
Like we all do.
Yeah. And then I actually did go through another pretty big loss. And then decided that kind of like brought up all the memories of losing my dad, and I decided to move here and quit Cactus, like, which is crazy because that was crazy. Like the longest relationship I've ever had. And it is so true. My dad, ever since I can remember, which I hate that saying because it's so cheesy, but anyway, ever since I can remember, he said he wanted to go to Hawaii with me, and we never did. And when he was sick, he said to me that he wished that he would have taken me to Hawaii, but that he would always say next year, you know, next year. And you know what? There's not a fucking next year sometimes.
Yeah.
So I spent so much time worrying about what people at work thought of me, if I had a nice bag, if I had a nice bathing suit, all this shit. And it's like, now what I remember is going to Denmark with my grandma and, you know, drinking beer and wine in Iceland and, you know, all of this shit that like before it's not that I didn't love these people before. It's not that I put them at less importance, but I mean, I did.
You didn't prioritize.
Yeah, I put them at less importance without even realizing it.
Yeah.
And so now I'm grateful that I am seeing what is really important, because at the end of your life, you're not going to think about, you know, the cell phone that you had or the computer, the, you know, the likes on Instagram or whatever. It's like, you're going to remember the like you and me, the relationship that we had, the moments we had, you know, and I think that it's so easy to forget that. It's so easy to get, you know, scooped right back up into, the little things.
Well, and the things that, like, truthfully just don't matter. And and I think that that's why a lot of people are left feeling so hollow in their life, because they are chasing after these things that they think they want. But it's when you get it, you're like, oh, that's, wow, a lot cheaper feeling than I thought it would be, kind of thing. And it doesn't feel, and you work really hard for a lot of these things that, you know, society kind of convinces us we need to look important and feel important and to show that we are successful, in fact, and whatever. But that isn't success.
No.
And it's not happiness, and it's not fulfillment. And I think it's so hard, all of these difficult things that we have to go through in life, but it is so necessary, because it really does kind of bring you back down to earth and make you realize like how important things are. And even you talking about traveling with your grandma and stuff, I went on a trip with my brother in February, my middle brother, and we've never been close. Like, we fought like cats and dogs growing up. We could not stand to be with each other. But after like the accident with my oldest brother, I just was like, I hate that we don't have enough memories that I can hold on to, like you talked about.
Yeah.
Like, I wish so badly that I had been kind of older in a way so that I could have really known how important it was to hold on to that kind of thing. And so that's why, like, I wanted to take that trip with my middle brother, because I'm like, even though like maybe we don't have the strongest relationship in general, I'm like, I don't want to look back and feel like, why didn't I just do something with him when like I had the chance to, kind of thing. Yeah. Like, because who fucking knows? I mean, Jesus Christ, if you see the kid ride a motorcycle, that's it. Like, like it's just, but like, you know, it's I don't want to let my life pass me by. I don't want to let my relationships pass me by. And I want to be able to experience all of these things to like the fullest.
Yeah.
And that's what I say when I justify why my bank account looks the way that it does. I'm just living my best.
Well, and that's the thing too, is like, we're not saints. Like, we're not robots. Do I still feel good when I get lots of likes on a picture? Abso-fucking-lutely. You know, was I proud when I hit, you know, a certain milestone or whatever on Instagram? Yeah, sure. But again, at the end of the day, it's not, at the end of your life, that's not what you're going to be thinking about.
Yeah. And I think there's nothing wrong with like, there's nothing wrong with nice things. There's nothing wrong with all these kind of whatever, but it's just, it shouldn't be the only focus kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, okay, just to kind of wrap this up, what is it that is there anything in particular that you feel like you do like day to day now when you're experiencing that feeling of loss? Because obviously that kind of like carries over years and stuff. Is there anything that you feel like kind of helps you push through?
In the beginning, I was still leaning on alcohol a lot, and I've been sober for 2.5 months. So now I try to think about him. Yeah. Because I still don't have any pictures of him up in my house because it's still too hard. It's been 3 years and it's still too hard to see his face. But my eyes are freaking watering again. So now what I'm trying to do if I'm having like a hard time with it is, instead of pushing it away, I sit there with the thought and with the emotion and just think about him. Yeah. And I don't know the psychology behind it. I'm not a psychologist, but it is proven that the what you push away becomes that much more powerful. Yeah. So by not thinking about that thought, you're making it have more power over you. So I just try to do that. And honestly, self-care is huge. Mm-hmm. You know, I really like baths. So I take a bath. In the morning, I drink my coffee outside and just like smile. I'm really practicing gratitude in my life these days. And I think the biggest thing that I do to honor my dad and to honor the grief and the journey and stuff like that is put him and his values of me kind of first. Yeah. So when we started doing the podcast and stuff, I thought, you know, what would my dad be proud of? And with acting and stuff, you know, would my dad be proud of me? And just everything. And sometimes I know, you know, that I say, if we spend money on something or something, I'm like, oh, my dad's rolling over in his grave. Sometimes I just have to push that aside. But I think gratitude is so powerful, and it's so easy to think about all the things you don't have or the emotions that you're having and stuff like that. But if you can find just even like one thing in each moment, then you're already ahead. You're already having like a good moment that day. Like I said in the question and answer podcast, you don't have to be happy every day, all day, but find happiness every day. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I'm really proud of you. I feel like you have worked so hard at coping in a healthy way, and because you have experienced so much loss, I mean, truly, like, we've scratched the surface kind of here today with like your experience with this, but you know, it is, you are kind of kicked when you're down, and that's been what your life has looked like for a while, with like in relation to like loss and stuff. But I'm proud of the fact that you've sort of pushed through that and found ways to cope and look after yourself while also, you know, taking the time to feel sad and whatever else, and carry on with your life. I think you're doing real good. Well, thank you so much for sharing with us.
Thank you. And thank you guys for listening and for, you know, allowing us to continue to share stuff like this, because I don't know, it's healing for us too, I think.
It is. It's very
therapeutic. And on that note,
it's therapeutic.
On that note, I think we'll take our leave.
I'm so sad to end on that note. I wish I had ended on YOLO. Anyways. Thanks guys for listening. We'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.